Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Lit Talk with Lisa. I'm Lisa, your host, your book buddy, and hopefully the voice that keeps you company while you're on your commute, out for a walk, or maybe just curled up with your own cup of coffee. Wherever you are right now, I'm so glad you're here. So today, we're diving into a book that, honestly, I think everybody should read at least in their life, once in their life. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. But before I get into the actual book, I want to start with a little story. Picture this. A few years ago, I had this friend. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah was smart, hardworking, and always seemed to be doing well. You know that one friend who has the nice apartment, the trendy outfits, the Instagram-worthy vacations? She gave off the vibe that money was just flowing. Meanwhile, I was over here obsessing about whether to splurge on oat milk lattes or just stick with regular coffee because, budgets. Anyway, one day Sarah and I were having lunch and she let it slip that she was drowning in credit card debt. Like, drowning. We're talking multiple cards maxed out, constant stress, sleepless nights, and it completely floored me because from the outside, she looked like she had it all together. That was the first time it really hit me that money isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about how you feel about it, how you behave with it, and what stories you tell yourself. And that's basically the heartbeat of the psychology of money. This book isn't about stock tips or the latest hot investments or complicated financial formulas. It's about us, humans, and how our emotions, habits, and even our personal histories shape the way we handle money. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear the word money, my brain immediately goes to stress, bills, rent, that nagging thought of, am I saving enough for the future? And Morgan Housel he nails this idea that the way we think about money is deeply personal. Two people could make the exact same salary, invest the exact same amount, and still end up in completely different places financially. Why? Because it's not just about math, it's about psychology. And that's why this book is so meaningful today. I mean, think about it. We're living in a time where people are constantly comparing themselves online, feeling like they're behind, chasing this idea of success that's tied to cars, houses, clothes, whatever. And yet, so many of us are silently stressed or even ashamed about money. The psychology of money takes all of that and says, hey, let's take a step back. Let's look at why we do what we do with money. And maybe, just maybe, we can start making better choices. All right, so let's start peeling back some of these lessons. One of the very first points Morgan makes is that doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. And that one hit me like a ton of bricks. Because let's be real, when we think about wealthy people, we usually assume they're geniuses. They must have had the perfect plan, the best degrees, the sharpest instincts, right? But in reality, plenty of super intelligent people make terrible money decisions, and plenty of average, everyday folks quietly build wealth over time. Think about it this way. Imagine two people, let's call them Jack and Maria. Jack has an MBA, crunches numbers for fun, loves charts, the whole thing. Maria is a teacher, makes a modest income, nothing flashy. Now, Jack gets caught up in risky investments. He's trying to outsmart the market, always chasing that big win. Meanwhile, Maria just consistently saves a little bit of every paycheck, doesn't panic when the market dips, and lives below her means. Fast forward 20 years, and Maria is sitting pretty with a nice nest egg, while Jack is stressed, maybe even broke. Who was smarter with money? It's Maria, not because she had better equations, but because her behavior set her up for long-term success. And that's really the key here, behavior intelligence. That's such a freeing thought, right? Because it means you don't have to be some financial wizard to be good with money. You just have to have discipline, patience, and a sense of perspective. Another early lesson that I love is this idea of luck and risk. Housel tells the story of Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. But here's something people don't always realize. Bill Gates happened to attend one of the only high schools in America at the time that had a computer. Like, what are the odds? That's luck. Of course, he was brilliant and hardworking, but the fact that he had access to that computer at that exact time in history, that played a huge role. On the flip side, you've got stories of people who were equally smart, equally driven, but one unlucky break. an accident, a health crisis, the wrong timing, and their trajectory look totally different. So luck and risk are like these invisible forces shaping our financial lives. And acknowledging that doesn't take away from hard work. It just makes us a little more humble. It makes us a little kinder, maybe even to ourselves. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, he started a small business right before the pandemic hit. He poured his life savings into it, had a great idea, and things were starting to look promising. And then boom, lockdowns, restrictions, the whole world stopped. Was he careless? No. Was he lazy? Absolutely not. It was just risk showing up at the wrong time. And that's the thing. We love to think that people's financial outcomes are all about their choices, but luck and risk play way bigger roles than we like to admit. And honestly, recognizing that can take a lot of pressure off. Because how many times have you looked at someone successful and thought, they're just better than me? When in reality, yeah, maybe they worked hard, but maybe they also caught a lucky break. And on the flip side, if you're struggling, it doesn't automatically mean you failed. Sometimes the cards just fell a certain way. Now, let's talk about enough. This one, it stings a little. The idea of enough is one of the early and really profound lessons in the book. And it's basically this. Knowing when you have enough is one of the most powerful money skills you can ever learn. Let me tell you, this is so hard in our culture. Because everywhere you look, you're told you don't have enough. Not enough savings. Not enough retirement funds. Not enough square footage in your house. Not enough followers on your feed. It's exhausting. And the danger is, if you're always chasing more, you'll never feel secure, no matter how much you actually have. Housel talks about people who had incredible wealth and still blew it all because they couldn't stop chasing more. And it's not just billionaires. It's us too. It's buying the new phone even though the one in your pocket works perfectly fine. It's upgrading your car because suddenly the old one feels embarrassing. It's that constant itch for the next thing. I'll share something personal here. A couple of years ago, I got a raise at work. Nothing huge, but enough to feel like, yes, finally, I can breathe a little. And what did I do? Did I save it all? No. I started upgrading little things, nicer clothes, more dinners out, that treat yourself mentality. And before I knew it, the raise was gone. My lifestyle had just expanded. It's called lifestyle creep, and it's sneaky. And the crazy part is, I wasn't actually happier. I didn't feel more secure. I just reset my definition of enough. So when Housel says learning to stop and say this is enough for me, it's not about settling. It's about peace. It's about choosing satisfaction instead of endless chasing. And I think that's one of the most underrated financial lessons we could ever learn. Okay, let me take a sip of water here because I'm talking a lot, but I hope you're with me. So far, we've touched on 3 big ideas. Behavior matters more than intelligence, luck and risk shape more than we realize, and knowing what's enough can change your whole relationship with money. And honestly, even just those 3, if you sit with them, they can totally shift how you think about your own financial life. But don't worry, we're just scratching the surface. In the next part, we're going to dig into some of the other early lessons in the psychology of money, like why compounding is basically magic, why our personal history shapes our money habits in ways we don't even notice, and how tiny changes can lead to massive outcomes over time. So, stick with me, take a breath, maybe think about your own definition of enough, and we'll pick this up right where we left off. All right, so let's get into something that honestly feels like it should come with a little sparkle sound effect, because it is that magical compounding. And listen, before you roll your eyes and think, math class, hang with me. I promise this is not about complicated equations or boring charts. It's about one of the simplest yet most powerful forces in the world of money. And actually, I'd say it's more than money. It's a force that shows up in life in all sorts of sneaky ways. Okay, so what is compounding really? It's that idea that your money doesn't just grow by what you put in, it grows by what your money earns. And then that growth itself starts to grow. It's like money having babies, and then those babies have more babies. And suddenly this giant family tree of dollars just multiplying quietly in the background. And here's the thing, our brains are just not wired to get compounding. We're wired to think in straight lines, right? Like you walk 10 steps, you end up 10 steps away. But compounding is exponential. It's like taking 10 steps and suddenly you've leapt across the block without realizing it. There's this great example in the book with Warren Buffett. And I know everybody brings up Warren Buffett in money conversations, but this story is worth it. Buffett is one of the richest men alive. But here's the kicker. Most of his wealth didn't come until after he turned 60. Like, sit with that. He started investing as a kid, yes, but the reason he's worth what he is today isn't because he's some kind of financial wizard pulling tricks out of thin air. It's because he started early and let compounding do its thing for decades. It's kind of like planting a tree. In the beginning, it's this little sapling. You water it, maybe throw some fertilizer on it, and for a while you're like, okay, not much is happening here. But then years pass, and suddenly it's taller than your house, it's giving shade, it's dropping apples or whatever fruit tree you planted, and you realize, oh, that tiny little start turned into something massive because time did the heavy lifting. And I'll be real with you. This lesson is both inspiring and frustrating. Inspiring because, wow, if you give things enough time, they can explode in growth. But frustrating because, well, we're impatient. We live in a same-day delivery kind of world. Waiting decades for results? That's not exactly Instagram friendly. But here's where it gets fun. Compounding isn't just about money. It's about habits too. Think about exercise. If you go to the gym one day, you don't walk out looking like The Rock. But if you keep showing up, even just doing small things, the results build on each other. Or relationships. It's not one deep conversation that makes a lifelong friendship. It's the dozens of small check-ins, the how are you really doing texts, the little jokes, the memories layered over time. That's compounding. I had this moment the other day with my niece. She's 7, and she asked me why she has to brush her teeth every night. And I'm like, sweetheart, because if you don't, those little cavities creep up. And as I said it, I thought, wow, that's compounding too. Not brushing once doesn't ruin your teeth. But not brushing night after night, year after year, that adds up. Just like saving a little bit of money adds up, or learning one new thing every week adds up. So the lesson here, and Housel really drives this home, is that small, consistent actions matter so much more than flashy, dramatic ones. The flashy ones look good on social media, but the boring, steady, consistent actions, they're the ones that actually build wealth, build trust, build health, all of it. And here's something I love about how he frames it. Compounding is powerful because of time, not because of brilliance, which means it's available to all of us. Like, you don't need to be Warren Buffett. You just need to start, keep going, and give it time. I remember talking to a coworker once. He was stressed about retirement, feeling like he hadn't saved enough. He was in his late 30s and kind of beating himself up. And then another colleague, older, looked at him and said, listen, don't underestimate what happens when you give it 20 years. Just put in what you can and stay the course. And I swear, you could see the weight lift off him a little. Because yes, starting late is harder, but compounding can still work its magic as long as you give it space. Now, the second idea I want to explore today ties really nicely into this, and it's the idea that our personal history shapes how we think about money. This one, it gets a little personal. Because Housel argues that a lot of the choices we make about money aren't based on cold, hard logic. They're based on the environment we grew up in and the experiences we've had. Think about it. If you grew up during a recession, maybe your parents were constantly stressed out about bills. Maybe you heard phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees 100 times. That sticks with you. You might grow up cautious, even fearful with money. On the other hand, if you grew up in a booming economy where things felt stable and safe, you might be more willing to take risks, invest boldly, spend freely. And none of that is right or wrong. It's just human. But it does mean that two people can look at the exact same financial situation and react in totally different ways. I'll give you a personal example. My grandparents lived through the Great Depression, and even decades later when times were way better, they never shook that scarcity mindset. My grandma used to save aluminum foil, wash it, and reuse it, like every single piece. To me as a kid, it felt quirky, But for her, it was survival habits lingering. And you better believe that trickled down. My parents were more frugal than a lot of my friends' parents. And even though I didn't live through anything like the Depression, I absorbed some of that mindset. To this day, I feel guilty throwing out leftovers, even if it's half a soggy sandwich that no one's ever going to eat. That's psychology, not logic. And then you meet people on the opposite side, folks who grew up in times of prosperity. Maybe their parents encouraged big dreams, bold risks. They might see money as this tool to chase opportunities, to go bigger. Same dollar bills, completely different emotional backdrop. It's kind of like weather shaping a landscape. Two valleys, two rivers, one carved by constant rain, the other by long droughts. They look totally different, even though they're both just nature doing its thing. Our experiences carve our financial mindset the same way. What's really powerful about recognizing this is that it gives us language for why we do what we do. Like if you know that your tendency to hoard money in a savings account instead of investing comes from your family's fear of losing it all, you can work with that. You can say, okay, I get it. This isn't irrational, it's historical. But maybe I can take small steps to build new habits. I was chatting with a friend not long ago who grew up in a family that struggled financially. Now she makes a great salary, but she can't bring herself to enjoy it. Every time she considers a vacation, or even just buying a nice bag, she feels this wave of guilt, like she's betraying her roots. And she told me, I know it doesn't make sense, but I can't shake it. And I told her, of course you can't shake it. You were trained for years to see money as survival, not joy. That awareness alone was a relief for her. Like, oh, this isn't just me being weird. It's me carrying my history. And honestly, it's not just family history. It's the era you grew up in. If you were born in, say, the 1970s, you saw crazy high inflation. If you were born in the 1990s, you saw the dot-com bubble. If you were born around 2008, your formative years were during the financial crisis. Each of those leaves an imprint. So of course, people have different attitudes about debt, about investing, about risk. So here's where Housel really makes it practical. Instead of judging other people's money choices, or even judging yourself too harshly, pause and ask, what experiences shape this mindset? Because often the behavior isn't about being smart or dumb, it's about context. And bringing it back to compounding, this is why starting early matters. Because the earlier you start, the more time you give yourself to smooth out the ups and downs of those personal biases. The early mistakes, the cautious moments, the bold risks, they all balance out over decades. But if you only give yourself a few years, your personal history plays an outsized role. So between compounding and personal history, you've got this interesting dynamic. On one hand, the math of compounding is universal. It works the same for everyone. On the other hand, the psychology of your history makes you experience that compounding in totally unique ways. Put them together, and you've basically got the lens for how you see money. All right, I know that was a lot, but I feel like these two lessons really open up some big aha moments. Like one is the universal rule. Time makes growth explode. The other is the personal rule. Your past shapes how you handle money right now. Both are huge, and both set the stage for some of the later lessons in this book that are just as mind-bending. And that's exactly where I want to take us next, because there's another piece of this puzzle that I think ties it all together, and it has to do with how our goals and expectations shift over time. We're going to dive into that idea, and trust me, it changes the way you look at not just money, but life itself. You know, the funny thing about money, and really about life, is that we keep moving the goalposts on ourselves. Like you hit a milestone you thought would feel amazing, and instead of celebrating, you instantly start thinking about the next milestone. And the next. And the next. It's like this endless treadmill. And this is where Morgan Housel digs into one of my favorite, but also slightly uncomfortable, ideas. How our goals and expectations shift over time. It's this sneaky little thing called the seduction of wanting more. And I mean, come on, we've all felt it. You finally get that promotion you were grinding for, and 2 months later, it feels normal. You thought it would make you feel rich or secure or accomplished, but nope. Now you're eyeing the next rung up the ladder, Or maybe you save up and buy your dream car. At first, you're driving around grinning like a kid on Christmas morning, but then you start noticing that your neighbor's car has features yours doesn't. And suddenly, dream turns into starter car. The problem isn't that we're greedy, it's that our expectations adjust way faster than our reality. We adapt. And that's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because, hey, it means we can adjust to tough times too. Like you lose a job, you tighten your budget, and somehow you survive. Humans are resilient like that. But it's a curse because when things go well, instead of feeling content, we just move the finish line further out. I'll tell you a story from my own life that still makes me laugh, kind of nervously. When I first started working in my 20s, my salary was small. Like, don't even think about guac at Chipotle small. I used to daydream about the day I could afford, I don't know, nice furniture. Maybe a little vacation without stressing about every single penny. And eventually, I got there. I remember buying this mid-century style couch. It was my first big adult purchase, and I was so proud. It felt like this symbol of success. Fast forward a few years, I get a raise, and suddenly that same couch looks meh, outdated. I started scrolling online for upgrades, imagining something sleeker, bigger, trendier, and I had to stop myself. Like, wait a second, wasn't this the couch I once dreamed about? Why am I acting like it's not good enough? That's the shifting goalpost in action. And the thing is, it's not just about stuff. It's about money itself. Maybe you tell yourself, if I just hit 6 figures, I'll feel secure. Then you hit it, and guess what? It doesn't feel secure. You're surrounded by people making more, spending more, and suddenly your enough is somebody else's just getting started. That's dangerous. Because if you never learn to define what's enough for you, you'll be chasing forever. Morgan Housel uses this phrase that really stuck with me. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalposts to stop moving. Just sit with that for a second. Not investing, not budgeting, not tax planning, but simply learning to stop moving the goalposts. And if you think about it, that's kind of revolutionary, because it means the real challenge isn't money, it's contentment. And honestly, it's not about giving up ambition. I don't think Housel is saying, just stop striving. It's more like, know where to draw the line so your ambition serves you instead of eating you alive. Otherwise, you risk turning into one of those people who has millions, but still feels like they're not there yet. And if that's not sobering, I don't know what is. Here's a little analogy that helps me frame it. Think about hiking. If you set out to climb a mountain, you're focused on reaching the summit. But imagine you keep reaching the top of one ridge, and instead of pausing to enjoy the view, you immediately look up at the next peak and say, well, I guess that's the real summit. You'd never feel satisfied. You'd just exhaust yourself, climbing endlessly higher. At some point, you've got to stop, take a breath, look around and say, this view is enough. And I think this lesson connects back to mental health in a big way. Because so much of financial stress isn't about actual lack. It's about perception. It's about feeling behind or less than or not there yet. If you can redefine there, you reclaim a lot of peace. Now, shifting gears a little, but still tied to this whole theme, there's another idea in the book that really blew my mind. And it's about tails. Not like wagging dog tails, but tails in the sense of rare, outlier events. Housel argues that in money, and in life, really, a small number of events account for the majority of outcomes. Like the big breakthroughs, the wild successes, the unexpected disasters. Those are the things that truly shape your financial life. Here's the wild part. Most of us spend our time obsessing over the everyday stuff. What stock to buy, whether to save 10% or 12 cents, when in reality, it's the few rare events that move the needle. It's the equivalent of worrying about the weather tomorrow, when what actually matters is whether a hurricane sweeps through once in a decade. Take the stock market, for example. A handful of companies, like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, have driven a massive chunk of returns over the past few decades. If you missed out on those few, you missed out on most of the gains. That's tails. The same is true in personal finance. You might make hundreds of small money decisions every year, but it's the one or two big ones, like buying a house at the right time, or choosing a stable career, or avoiding catastrophic debt, that define your trajectory. Let me make it even more personal. Think about relationships. You meet tons of people in your life, coworkers, acquaintances, neighbors, but it's a handful of them, your partner, your closest friends, maybe a mentor, that shape your life story. That's tails. A small number of interactions determine most of your happiness. Or take health. You might eat thousands of meals in your lifetime, but it's a few critical choices, like whether you start smoking or whether you take care of your body in your 20s, that have outsized impacts on your long-term health. Again, tails. I remember this conversation I had with a mentor once. He told me, don't sweat every single tiny money decision. Just focus on not blowing up. And at first I was like, what? But then he explained, avoid the really big mistakes. Don't take on debt you can't handle. Don't bet everything on one risky move. Don't ignore insurance. Basically, protect yourself from the tail events that can wipe you out, and the rest will take care of itself. That advice has stuck with me more than any budgeting tip ever could. And here's the kicker. You can't predict tails. They're rare by definition. But you can prepare for them. You can leave yourself wiggle room, so when the unpredictable happens, because it will, you're not destroyed by it. That's why emergency funds matter, why humility in investing matters, why overconfidence is so dangerous. It's not because the little daily stuff doesn't matter. It's because the rare extreme events matter so much more. I think about the 2008 financial crisis. Most people didn't see it coming. But for those who were overleveraged, who had no safety net, it was devastating. Meanwhile, the people who had some margin of safety, they weren't thrilled, obviously, but they survived. That's the lesson. You don't need to predict the storm. You just need to build a house that won't collapse when it hits. And I know it sounds kind of grim to think about worst-case scenarios, but in a way, it's comforting. Because once you accept that tails are inevitable, you can stop obsessing over perfect prediction and focus on resilience. That's a word I love. Resilience. It's not about knowing exactly what's coming. It's about being strong enough, flexible enough to bend without breaking when it does. So when you put these two lessons together, the moving goalposts and the power of tails, you start to see a bigger picture forming. One says, be careful not to let your desires run endlessly ahead of you. The other says, be humble, because the rare, unpredictable events are what really matter. And if you can hold those both in mind, wow. That's a financial philosophy that's not just about money, but about life. I don't know about you, but I find that both grounding and freeing at the same time. It's like focus on what you can control, your definition of enough, your resilience, and let go of the illusion that you can plan every twist and turn. And where I want to take this next is into a really juicy kind of philosophical part of the book. How freedom, not money itself, is actually the highest dividend wealth pays. That idea shifts the whole conversation from dollars to lifestyle, from accumulation to autonomy. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into next. So here's the thing that really sits with me after spending time with this book. Wealth isn't about numbers. It's not about net worth spreadsheets or some magical income threshold. It's about how you feel about your life, how much freedom you have, how much stress you carry, whether you can wake up tomorrow and actually choose what to do with your time. That's the dividend that matters most. And when Morgan Housel talks about this, it's not in some abstract, motivational poster way. It's practical. Because if the whole point of money is to give us choices, then the way we spend it, save it, or even think about it should be filtered through that lens. Does this give me more control over my life or less? I remember a conversation with an old coworker. She made a ton of money, like serious money, but her job demanded 80-hour weeks, constant travel, and she was basically on call 24/7. And one day she just sighed and said, I feel like I'm renting my life out. And it struck me because on paper, she looked wealthy. But in reality, she had no freedom. She was trapped. That's when it clicked for me. You can be rich and still feel poor if your time isn't your own. And on the flip side, I know someone who makes an average income, nothing flashy, but she works 4 days a week, spends time gardening, volunteers at her local animal shelter, and she just glows, like she radiates peace. And you know what? That's wealth too, because she's using her money in a way that buys back her time and lines up with what matters to her. So maybe the real question isn't, how much do I want to earn, but What kind of life do I want to build? Money is just the tool. And oh man, that perspective, it changes everything. Another thing that really resonates is how much of this book is about humility. Humility in the sense of we don't know what the future will throw at us. We don't know what risks will show up or what lucky breaks might appear. And instead of pretending we can control all of it, the wiser path is to prepare, to be patient, and to stay flexible. It's less about mastering money and more about mastering ourselves. And I'll be honest, I find that oddly comforting. Because for so long, I thought money was about being the smartest person in the room. Like, you had to be some kind of genius investor to get ahead. But this book reminded me, nope. You just need good habits, some patience, and a willingness to step back and check your own emotions. That's doable. That's human. Let me pause here and just say, if you're listening to this and you feel behind or stressed or maybe even ashamed about where you are financially, please hear me. You're not alone. We all carry money stories, some of them heavy, some of them messy. And that's exactly why the psychology of money is such a gift. It gives us language for those stories, and it reminds us that the game isn't about perfection. It's about perspective. For me personally, the biggest takeaway is learning to define my own enough. Like right here, right now. Not in some future fantasy version of my life, but today. And to realize that security and happiness aren't waiting on some magic number. They're things I can practice by making intentional choices with what I already have. It also makes me think differently about comparison. Because honestly, it's so easy to scroll online, see someone else's highlight reel, and think, wow, I'm behind. But this book gently whispers, hey, their financial journey is shaped by their history, their risks, their luck. Yours is yours. And it's okay that it looks different. That's such a relief, right? I guess what I love most about this book is that it's not really about money. It's about being human. It's about understanding that our quirks and fears and hopes all play into how we handle money. And instead of ignoring that, we can embrace it, work with it. It's less about beating ourselves up for not being perfect and more about creating a little grace, a little breathing room for the messy way humans actually live. And if I could boil it all down to one thought, it would be this. Money, at its best, is a tool to build a life that feels rich, not just in dollars, but in time, in freedom, in peace of mind. That's the real wealth. So wherever you are listening right now, whether you're walking the dog, doing the dishes, or maybe just lying in bed with your headphones in, I hope this conversation sparks something for you. Maybe it's a reminder to slow down. Maybe it's encouragement to start small with saving. Or maybe it's just the nudge to stop comparing and start defining what your enough looks like. And hey, if you want to take one tiny step after listening to this, here's my suggestion. Write down your own definition of wealth. Not a number, but a sentence. Something like, wealth to me is being able to leave work early on Fridays. Or, wealth to me is knowing I can take care of my family in an emergency. Whatever feels true to you. Because once you have that definition, it gets a lot easier to make choices that line up with it. All right. I think that's where I'll leave us today. This book has been such a joy to share with you. It's thought-provoking, humbling, and honestly kind of comforting in a world that can make money feel so overwhelming. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, for listening, for reflecting, for just being here. It means the world. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of your money, and most importantly, take care of your peace. This has been Lit Talk with Lisa. Thanks for tuning in, friends.